Picking up, buddy. So today I'm back, and today, 1st of February, we're going to be doing my January wrap-up and my to-be-read for February. The books I read over January have all generally been quite good. And today's going to be a little bit different because you'll have seen I've started a series on my channel of 60-second reviews. So basically everything that I read in January either has a review or is going to have one in the next week or so. So I'm not going to talk about them an absolute ton here, but what I will do is give a bit of general thoughts and leave some links down below to all the 60-second reviews I've done over the past month or so of the books I'm talking about. And then obviously, as normal, I'll tell you all about the February books I'm going to read and the selection I've picked. So without further ado, I'm going to get straight started with my January wrap-up. And the last book I actually read in the month of January was Dune by Frank Herbert. So I mentioned I've been wanting to read this for a long time. It's like the best-selling sci-fi book ever, and it's one that I've always just been really interested to read. I really enjoyed this, I have to say. It's a very complicated world it creates, but you get so sucked into it, it's amazing. The ending is very rushed and a bit abrupt, but I've ordered the second one in the series to read soon, so that's a good sign. And the characters are all really well developed, and the plot is just really interesting as well. All in all, it feels a bit Game of Thronesy, a little bit Red Rising-y. It kind of combines a lot of those things, but it's got a slightly deeper, more philosophical plot. And overall, I just really enjoyed it. I gave it an 8 out of 10. The other sci-fi that I read in January is the Martian Chronicles. So I've got a 60-second review for this already up. And basically, I really enjoyed it. It's a collection of short stories all set on Mars. It was written in about the 50s, and it feels really obviously written in the 50s. It's got a lot of kind of very of-the-time references to nuclear energy and space exploration and Mars and just the political situation. And it's really interesting both as kind of a historical artefact, but also just in the things it does with the stories. Most of them are fantastic. The plots are really good. The characters are well developed. The last one, which is called The Martian, especially, is amazing. And it's just a really good collection of sci-fi short stories, and I'm really glad I read it. I gave that an 8 out of 10. Of course, it wouldn't be a wrap-up of mine if it didn't involve some manga. And this month I read Fairy Tail Volume 2. So basically it's about a guild of magicians, and basically they've all got a different power of some sort, and they take out contracts. It's all about making the money and, you know, the fame that comes with it. This one, you start to see a lot more of the world beyond the guild, which is really interesting. The world it's crafted is really good, and a bit of the political situation, and it's just really, really interesting next step in the story. The characters are really well developed as well, and the only real issue with this is that it very much feels like it's setting up Volume 3 rather than being a story by itself. So I'm excited to read Volume 3. I think it will be good following this, but it does mean this was a little bit hindered. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. This month was actually also really strong for me in terms of YA. I've not read a grand amount of YA for quite a while, but this month I've changed that. One of the ones I read is Glass Sword by Victoria Aveyard. So it's a follow-up to Red Queen, which came out last year. It's basically a little bit dystopia, but it's got quite a lot of kind of fantasy elements. They're basically a lot of the things revolve around almost superpowers. It's just really clever. It adds a lot of new stuff to the dystopia. Some really good twists. This one, the character development is really good. It's one of the things I really enjoyed about this over the first one especially, is the kind of supporting character cast gets really well explored. There are some bits in here which should be really satisfying and aren't. Some big meetups with the big baddies and long-standing conflicts that resolved that are just done a little bit unexcitingly and aren't quite as grand as you'd expect. But overall, it's a really good set for Volume 3. The characters are really good. The plot's quite well explored and really well paced. I gave it an 8 out of 10. The other YA I read is The Art of Being Normal by Lisa Williamson. So I've got a full review of this up, which I put up in the last few days. And basically, oh God, I loved this book. It's about, as you can tell from the cover, a biological male teenage boy who actually identifies as a girl, and it's all about his journey with that, dealing with that with his parents, but also the other main character, a boy called Leo. It's about their relationship, and there's some really interesting twists and revelations that you don't expect. It's not a romance, which I absolutely adored, and it's just a really interesting YA novel that does something very different to anything else I've read in quite a long time. And this is the first book that's ever made me cry. Now that's a good sign, that it really hits you right in the heart with like proper sucker punches and all that. And it's just definitely one of those books that I think anyone with an interest in YA literature or even a lot of kind of modern issues, read this because it's absolutely wonderful. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Fiction then, I read a couple of books this month. The Versions of Us is one of those. And basically this is a little bit like the film Sliding Doors. So there are 3 separate timelines. In one timeline, the 2 main characters meet and start dating. In the second timeline, the main characters don't meet. And in the third timeline, the characters meet, but one of them gets pregnant by another person and they split up. And basically it follows their lives from there onwards. So it kind of regroups at certain points, specific birthday parties and anniversaries and things, where all 3 storylines kind of coincide with slightly different permutations. It's just so clever how the author kept all 3 different viewpoints in her head at the same time when she's planning it. I have no idea, but she must be a genius to have done it. And what I really like as well is that you would think from the initial starting point there'd be one good one happy one sad one, and kind of one in-betweeny one. But actually, the variety of things that go on in each one means that there isn't really a right answer. There isn't one that is the main story, and they all come to a really good conclusion together. Really, really enjoyed this. I gave this an 8.5 out of 10. The last fiction I read this month was The Widow by Fiona Barton, so this is an advanced reading copy, and basically this is penned as very much in the Gone Girl, Girl on a Train style of thing. The main character, the titular widow, is basically a woman whose husband was accused of abducting and murdering a little girl, and it follows back with flashbacks over the investigation, and the present day when this is set, her husband has just died and it's her telling her half of the story. There's lots of flashbacks and multiple different narrations from kind of a reporter and a detective and things, but it's just really, really cleverly done. It's different enough to all the other books of this style that it actually really stands out, and I really, really enjoyed this more than I have a lot of the others. It does feel a little bit formulaic at some points. Some of the characters aren't quite as well explored. For example, the reporter, who's one of the main characters in this, doesn't really have any depth to her. The first few chapters she does, but after that she very much falls by the wayside. It just doesn't feel like it's fully developed, and there isn't really that big twist you're expecting. There is quite a lot of interesting stuff about the character development, which is what a lot of this kind of genre tries to do, but it's not got the big twist that things like Gone Girl have got, and that's what's a little bit disappointing about this. But all in all, really enjoyed it. If you like those kind of books, you'll love this. I think it's better than Girl on the Train and Gone Girl, so definitely give it a read. I gave it an 8 out of 10. The last 2 books I read in January then are typical of me, non-fiction. The first was The Meaning of Science by Tim Lewins. So this is kind of an introduction to the philosophy of science, kind of a look at what the limits of science are, what can it tell us, what should we ignore, and it's just a really interesting little encapsulation of all the ideas that go with that. And this series I've always really enjoyed. This one wasn't quite as good as the last couple I've read. Who Governs Britain was one of my favourite books last year, and this hasn't quite got the same appeal to it, but I did enjoy it, and it's a really interesting topic to explore. Definitely give it a read if it's a subject you're all interested in. It's a really unique kind of slant on popular science reading, and a really good combo of philosophy and science. Definitely give it a read if that's up your street. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. The final book I read last month then was Fever Pitch by Nick Hornby, so again there's a review of this already up. Really interesting book. It's a really good combination of sports writing and biography. Nick Hornby, obviously the guy who wrote About a Girl, and basically it chronicles his life and his relationship with Arsenal, the football club, and football in general. The first half does a really good job of combining the football writing with bits about his parents' divorce, his relationship with them. That kind of fades away towards the second half, which is a real disappointment for me. But all in all, I think it's an interesting book if you like sports writing but want something a bit different, that's not a standard biography, something a bit more interesting. Give this a read. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. So they're the books I read in January. Let's look at what I'm going to read in February. So as ever, we'll start with a bit of non-fiction. First thing I'm going to read, Jeremy Hutchinson's Case Histories. So this is a really interesting mixture of law, biography and history. So it follows Jeremy Hutchinson, who is a very high-profile 20th century barrister, and it covers like 10 or 11 of his landmark cases, and it covers what that shows about him as a person. It shows what that impact that had on British politics and British society, and obviously it's got the legal elements and how that all fits together. It's a really interesting mixture I've not seen before, and to tie the history and the law part together is very clever. I'm about 50 pages in so far and already really enjoying it. The characters are really well, you get a really good sense of who Jeremy Hutchinson is, and I'm really excited to see how it progresses kind of down each individual legal case. We've also got non-fiction wise the 48 Laws of Power. So this is very different to my normal thing. It's kind of a businessy self-help book, but what it does really well is it gives you these 48 laws of power, and it'll give you what that law is, It'll give you a time when it was covered well in history, a time when in history someone didn't follow that law, and the impact that's had to kind of back up what he's saying. So again, really interesting mixture of business, self-help and history, which again is right up my street, and I'm looking forward to giving that a read too. In terms of more standard fiction, there isn't actually that much I've got recently, but the main thing I'm excited to read is Labyrinth by Jorge Luis Borges. So this is actually one that I was told about by one of the guys I was interviewing for a job at work, very interestingly, and it's a short story collection with a really ton of really abstract ideas. It covers a whole variety of things. For example, there's a library where every single possible book ever written is there, and it's just a really clever set of stories that covers a whole variety of things. I'm looking forward to giving those a read as my fiction for the month. Obviously, for me, sci-fi is a big thing, and if you see my book haul, it won't be a surprise to know that this month I'm so excited to read Morning Star by Pierce Brown. So, Red Rising and Golden Sun are two of my favourite books of the last few years by an absolute mile, and this is the final concluding part of that trilogy. It's definitely bigger than the others, but I cannot wait to get started. They're kind of a bit of a combination of Game of Thrones and kind of Ian M. Banks books. They're quite like space Game of Thrones, essentially, with all the politics and twists and bloodshed that you'd expect to go with that. And if you enjoy Game of Thrones and want something a bit different, definitely read these. They are amazing. There isn't too much science to go with it. It's quite like easy sci-fi, but I'm so excited to finish the trilogy, and I really hope it lives up to the expectations I've got. The first two have been so good, it's a high target to aim for. Again, following the trend of reading a bit more YA recently, I've got two books I'm reading this month. The first is Illuminae by Kaufman and Christoph. So this has got a really interesting narrative structure that it covers a whole variety of things. It's got kind of conversations and logs and letters as well as a standard narrative, and it's really interesting to see how all those are going to fit together. It's kind of a sci-fi setting, but I don't know that much about the setting. I mainly just know about the concept of it and the whole varied narrative style. But that's right up my street. I'm really excited to give that a read. The last YA book I'm reading in February is Half Bad by Sally Green. So I have read this before. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this on this channel a few times. But basically the third one in this trilogy is about to come out in the next couple of months. And I never read the second one, but I feel like it's one of those ones where you really need to read them kind of successively. So I'm going to start again with the first one this month, try and read Half Wild next month, and then Half Lost, which is the third one the month after. I'm really excited to read these because I loved the first one. It was just a bit too long ago to remember stuff, and I'm really excited to revisit that world. The last book I'm planning to read is Death Note Volume 4. So this is a series that I have really enjoyed so far. I've kind of been staggering how quickly I read them because I don't want to finish them, which is always a sign of a really good series. There's another two left after this one, and basically it's about a guy who finds a demon-powered notebook, and if you write in it a person's name, a time, and a cause, then they'll die at that time by that method. And it's really clever. There's a lot of philosophical stuff about how the main character tries to use this, what he's aiming to do, and it's just a really interesting philosophical kind of stint on a manga. And I've really enjoyed them so far, and I can't wait to read the last one. Of course, there's probably going to be a couple of other books I end up adding in because that always happens, but that's my basic list for February. Ton of really good stuff across a ton of genres, and I'm really excited to get cracking on them. As always, if you've liked this video, please leave a like and subscribe, it's really appreciated, and please comment if you've read any of the books or you've got any suggestions for what I can read for March. I think this is pretty much all of the books I've currently got that I'm excited to read are all coming in February, so I've got a few gaps open in March, so any suggestions you've got are really appreciated. I've got a few from my 300 subscriber video and other comments to have a look at, but any more are always appreciated. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed. My Twitter and Goodreads are in the description if you want to give me a follow on those. Keep up to date with what I'm reading as I do it. And other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next few days with my next video.